My name is Wendi Robinson. I'm from Sevierville, Tennessee, and I'm a victim of criminal court corruption and family court corruption.
Wendi, let's go back and get a little background. When did you meet your late husband?
I worked in 2003. I worked at a coffee shop in Seymour, Tennessee. I worked 5:30 a.m. till 1:30 p.m., went to school at night, and he came in to get coffee, so a very normal way. Appeared to be, of course he was good looking, but he appeared to be, just a Christian, nice guy, funny guy. We dated, and of course when you're dating somebody, you never really know who they are. You hope, you never think in your mind this could be somebody crazy. You just think they're what they say they are. And so he had orders to go to Iraq. He was in the Marine Corps Reserve. So that whole 9 months that he was gone, I spent with his mother and stepfather. My mother, my father, my brother, sister-in-law, everybody got to know what we thought got to know his family.
So you married before he went to Iraq?
After he got back.
Okay.
And I just want to say that everything I thought he was, his family backed up about him. Everything, and even in telling you this, is hindsight now. So it's hard to, there's lots of anger because of things. But when he got back, we got married. And when I married him, nobody bothered to tell me things that I should have known at the time. And probably 2 weeks after I married him, the first verbal outburst came. And that's when I thought that it was something to do with Iraq.
I didn't tell you this in the beginning, and it hasn't come up yet, but when I ask you a question later on, always answer where you incorporate the question in your response. Because just think, whatever is used, my voice is never going to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
It has to stand alone.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so if I ask you how's the weather, you can't say, it's
so
great.
I should say I met him, blah, blah, blah. I met James
everything
Jason
you've done
Hicks.
so far is fine, but just
Okay,
keep
I
that
got
in
you.
mind.
They can't
just
hear you,
think that
right?
whatever, that I've never heard, so what you
you're
say
not
has
here.
to stand alone.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm here, but I'm just not going
Right.
to be on. This needs to be the focus on everybody else.
So I need to
I've
redo-
chosen to do it this way.
Do I need to redo that?
Nope. No.
Okay.
I just wanted to, I didn't tell you that up front and wanted you to know that.
Okay.
All right. Let me get some dates down. You met him, when did you meet him?
I met James Jason Hicks in 2003. Married him in 2004, November.
And when he came back from Iraq and you got married, how long was it before you started seeing some signs that you were uncomfortable with?
It was about 2 weeks after I married him that the first outburst, which was a verbal one at the time, happened.
Was this directed at you?
Yes.
And how did it affect you?
It threw me, of course, because this is not the person that I thought. But then I assumed that it was, I went to several meetings with the Marine Corps that they might do this. They might try drugs. They might be depressed and alcohol abuse possibly because of what they did over there. So I related everything to that. Tried to help him.
So you were sympathetic,
Absolutely.
war wife, if you will, who had been counseled as to this is not necessarily unusual.
Right. It was not unusual. And so since there was nothing else I knew about his background, we went to 7 counselors. I think 3 of those were VA counselors, trying to get him help, which he was willing to do. And it was after probably a year to a year and a half of doing all of that I realized there's something more happening. There's something else there. Something's very wrong, because it was, liquor hidden everywhere, beer hidden everywhere, pot. His teeth were turning black, had black lines. The verbal were turning into physical threats. Not just, lunging at me, which to me is just as bad. I'm not trying to demean the verbal, it leads to physical. But then there were threats on me, and throwing full recliners over in the living room. It was just horrible. I lived in complete fear of him. I went to my family and his, because I believe that when it gets to that point, it's too much. So his family, his mother, admitted that, he had problems. And he lost his father when he was 12 of a heart attack on his birthday. I did know that. So, of course, that's awful. But there was just something else was wrong. And to kind of fast forward it, his mother, in other words, was very aware, and so was his stepfather, brother, or sister-in-law, of the things that were going on. So when I took out the order of protection in September 17th of 2007, it wasn't like a shock. It was already, the family knew, but it was because I went to a public, I went legal with it, that everybody turned on me. In other words, I'm the bad person now.
All right, let me stop you. When did the kids come in?
Okay. Our first child was born on August the 24th of 2005. Then we had the twins on April the 9th of 2007.
Now, you had problems with him before you had the first child.
Right.
So did you think about whether, about bringing children into that environment?
I got pregnant with our first child our honeymoon week. So, and again, I thought that I had sympathy for his issues. So I loved him. It wasn't like I wanted to get away from him. I wanted to help him. I believed in him. The twins, he raped me. There's no other way to say it. So that's how that happened.
And I just know that it's the kind of question that somebody else would think about. So I think that's great.
No, it's not
I don't
easy.
know that we use that. But I don't want to ask you questions that will get you upset. But
It's the truth. So
yeah. All right. So what led to taking out a protective order?
he told me he was going to split my head open like a coconut, and that he had that his family had money, and he was going to get the dirtiest attorney he could find and take the kids away. And I had to do something. And when you're in it, living in it, you're terrified. But then, who I am as a person, how I was brought up, kicked in, and I knew I had to do something. So that's what I did, and that was the right thing to do, and I knew that. You don't bring up children around it.
Let's just see if they calm down a bit. All right, let's go back now, and again, when was it that you took legal action to obtain a protective order?
September 17th of 2007, I took out the order of protection.
I spoke, so I missed you out. Go again.
I took out the order of protection September 17th of 2007.
And how old were the children at that point?
The twins were 4 months old, and our oldest was 2.
And at that point in time, had there been, to your knowledge, any improper activity with your eldest child?
My husband would take him, put him in the truck, and just drive away. And I would be like a maniac screaming in the driveway, where are you going? You're taking my child. I didn't know where he was taking him. You never suspect that. I don't think my mind never went to that. But I know now that it was happening then.
Okay. What was happening then?
He was sexually abusing our son.
I'll let you say that. That was perfect.
I'm getting emotional, so I'm forgetting what you're telling me.
That's okay. And we can do over all this. We just got the camera running. We do
There's a
everything.
dressing room from the door.
That was
That's right.
That was great. But we need to.
That's right.
We need to be sure and tell everybody who he is.
Okay, right.
So why don't you just now say when I filed the protective
I
order.
got it.
Just whatever it is you want to say there,
Okay.
to tie it together so that we can have everybody
Okay.
identified. Okay?
All right. When I took out the order of protection on my husband, he was very violent. He was taking a dresser, putting it in the bedroom inside with him and my son. So I was not able to even open the door. You never think that that is going on at the time. It was so bad with everything else. We were going to counseling, my husband and I, with our pastor at the church. I found child pornography in the garage. I called the pastor. He told me to put it back, that he would talk with him. Of course, now I know I should have called the police, but in the moment, I listened to the pastor. That was the final straw for me. He threatened to split my head open like a coconut, and I just had a moment of clarity where I knew I had to do something, and I needed to get away from him. I was afraid of him. I was afraid of the money that his family had, his threats, but I knew I had to get away from him and protect the children. So that is when I took out the order of protection. That is why.
And you were given the order of protection?
It was granted.
So a judge
The order of
heard
protection was granted. A judge heard it.
And did your husband honor that?
He broke the order of protection, my husband did, twice by calling the house. It has been told to me and said by his family that, that's silly. You call the house, that's not really breaking it. But the police officer told me that in fact is definitely breaking it, the order of protection, because then they kind of try one thing. The next thing you know, they're at the door. So he said, you absolutely need to go ahead and do this. He is breaking it. And he knew my number. He knew who I was. He said that he was calling the sister-in-law, but he broke it twice. He was driving by the neighborhood on the street over, things like that. But he called and broke it twice. And I did, of course, what I was told. I mean, it scared me.
And how involved were your parents at this time in your situation?
My parents were very involved in supporting me. We were in support of him getting help. Everybody was in support of that. But because his mother and his family were just wanting to cover it up, they didn't want to acknowledge it. It became very, very hard to communicate with them about it. They wanted me to just kind of be quiet, stay home, I guess forget about it. My mother was staying every single night with me at the house that we lived in because she was scared for us. I had little babies. I was terrified. I was sleeping on the couch or in the nursery of the twins' bedroom with my other one's door open. And she just, we would have hot coffee on the, boiled just in case. This was after the order. Jingle bells on the door, just in case.
So why did you have hot coffee on the boil?
Sorry. In case he came.
I had hot coffee on.
Mm-hmm.
You need to say, we kept hot coffee on
I'm
the
sorry.
boil. So that.
Okay. We kept hot coffee on the boiled in case he came to try and break in. So there was protection. My mom would hang jingle bells on the door, which sounds silly, but that's how scared we were. And it's a very real situation. And, we were just scared of him. You don't know who you're living with when this happens now. Now you question, who are you? Who are you living with? That's when I started digging. After the order of protection, I started digging through papers. I found his ex-wife, and I phoned her. She spoke with me and told me that he had blinded her in one eye by knocking her head up against a tile floor. That her parents, like mine, had tried to help him. That he was seeing a doctor in Texas, gave me his name and number. I called him. He spoke with me. Even though he wasn't really supposed to, he was so concerned because he remembered him and there was children, so he wanted to help. And he eventually did fly down and testify.
So you didn't have a gun. Your sole
No.
source of protection was jingle bells and hot coffee.
We were protected by jingle bells and a pot of coffee, and my dad, neighbors, the neighbors knew. They've seen his outburst even before I married him, but felt like if they had come to warn me that I wouldn't listen because I didn't know who they were. And they're probably right, honestly. But they were very supportive and watched out, and it was a very scary time. Very scary time.
How many different counselors did you and your late husband go to see?
My husband and I went to approximately 7 counselors together. The VA 3 times, pastor at the church, Another counselor that we went to that he knew. It's just like a big circle. Nothing was ever resolved. He didn't like them. They were asking too many questions. You know, I just had to wise up and realize there's something more.
But from all accounts, it sounds like you did everything that a wife could do. I mean, 7 counselors. I don't know how many people would even go that far.
I stuck with it as long as I could, the marriage. I mean, I really did. And, you know, what do you do?
So the protective order's been filed. You're protecting yourself with the hot coffee. Did you ever have to use the hot coffee?
We never had to use the hot coffee or the jingle bells. I think, you know, when he was arrested for breaking the order of protection, he backed off, you know. But, you know, when you find out, I mean, I was finding papers about him being bipolar, his mental, I mean, his Marine Corps records are shocking. He should have never been sent over there. They recommend him for a discharge under honorable conditions because of his mental state. I have all the documents. So, you know,
Not to have a gun.
I also found paperwork where he did try to apply for a gun, where the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation denied him that. And I did not know, that was when we were married, and I did not know that he had any intention or that he was trying to purchase a gun. What that was for, I don't know, but it's pretty scary to find it. You know, and I mean, I was out there, he hung out in the garage, and I went out there, and there was a knife in his hand. And even one time he had a pistol in his hand, and he asked me if I wanted to clean up a mess, you know, threatening suicide. And I said, I guess I will have to, if that's what you choose to do, but that's a very selfish thing to do.
Now, he went to Iraq?
He went to Iraq.
And what was his role in Iraq?
His role in Iraq, he was a lance corporal. I really don't know. I know that I have paperwork that shows he should not have been there. The same commanding officer that signed off 2 years before he was sent over there saying he should not be in the Marine Corps is his CO in Iraq. And I have that paperwork to prove that. So,
I mean, did he carry a gun and go into buildings and clear buildings?
I also have his VA records, and it states in there that he had friends who were killed and lost body parts. And all I can tell you is that everybody came back that went over there with one injury, and it was the guy shot himself in the leg by accident. Everybody that was over there with him said that they just really didn't encounter any combat.
All right, so the protective order's in place. He's broken it. He gets arrested. Kind of take me a little further from there.
We go to court after the order of protection, and everything finally goes to court. Judge Dwayne Sloan, which is the first thing that happened after this that was horrible. Even though the order of protection's in place, he's not supposed to be around the children or I, grants visitation anyway at his mother's and stepfather's. So now we have to go and take the children. It's very difficult in that situation because you're not even supposed to communicate. So you're telling me I have to drop the kids off. You know, it's impossible. But we did what we were told. Again, trusting the system, the people that are running the system, the judge. And that was just a bad situation. Ethan my oldest son had not seen him for about 6 weeks. So when we dropped him off, my oldest son, who was 2, backed up immediately from him. We didn't know exactly why, but we just started to kind of really take note of that behavior. He would throw himself on the garage floor, very angry, would try to lock himself in their bathroom. We just started writing down notes. We didn't know what was going on, but we knew something was wrong. That's not normal. So we got a LCSW that was highly recommended and respected, and I just went in there and told her, I don't know what's going on, but I know something is.
Okay. What's ALCS?
A licensed clinical social worker. In her 60s, several years experience with children, over several visits with just my son and her, and play therapy and his words. It was, diagnosed as sexual abuse, and my husband, the perpetrator. No doubt. She testified as well.
So what in the world did you and your family think when you get this report from the social worker?
Well, by the time we got the report from the LCSW, who was, treating my son, we knew by then, because of what he was saying to us at home, that there was sexual abuse. It was awful. I even took him to Children's Hospital and had an ER doctor look at him just because I saw something on him that, your mind races when you even think that something could be happening. And we really did think at this point something was going on. Also at this point, Department of Children's Services were involved and were doing their investigation. They ended up indicating him. So by the time that her report came out, we already knew. We knew. There was no doubt, this was going on.
All right, so let me understand that. The licensed clinical social worker and the Department of Children and Family Services, is that what it's called in Tennessee?
Just DCS, Department of Children's Services.
Department of,
ER doctor.
So both and the ER doctor, all three told you that there was sexual abuse?
All three, the ER doctor at Children's Hospital, DCS, and the LCSW, all agreed on the abuse, no doubt at all that it was going on.
And which ones of them were able to identify your husband as the perpetrator?
My husband was identified as the perpetrator by DCS. They did indicate him, which means AIPI. He is indicated as the perpetrator. Nobody else. And the DA signs off on that, the police department, we have the paperwork on that.
And Nan said it was.
His LCSW, she testified. She said it. She used my son's words, and what he said to her, and what in play therapy, he did to show her that was it. Everything that he was scared of related back to that house and my husband or somebody there.
Okay. And give us a time frame on this. When was this that you learned all of this?
All of this came together probably in 2008. Actually, there was never a divorce. The newspapers claimed that we were going through a custody battle and a divorce when there never was a divorce or a custody battle. Actually, as it should, my child's abuse trumped everything, and that was just not even dealt with. Went straight to the state against my husband, the mother, and the stepfather, because it was supposed to be in their care, and it should have never happened, obviously. So the state had taken them to court, and that's what was going on, even when he was killed. The judge, Ben Strand, who is awful in that case, just was very flippant about the whole thing. The LCSW tried to just totally demolish her reputation by producing, my husband's attorney produced a piece of paper, said that she was trying to make up a website, that she was a psychologist, a doctor. That was never even on, I don't even think her practice has a website. So everything was just turned away from the important issue of my son's abuse and directed at that piece of paper, which was ridiculous. Anybody could do that and make that up. So she had to go then. He even reported her to the board, the judge, which was just ridiculous. Of course she was fine, but it took all the focus off of what it should have been on. It was ridiculous. We have her testimony. It was just like a joke. Like he even said, he would go ahead, and April 9th was the twins' birthday. And he said, I think it was 7 o'clock at night. And he said, well, there's no allegations against him abusing the twins, so he can see them at McDonald's tonight. And they were only one. Ready for bed. Hadn't seen him, don't even know who he is.
All right, let's go back and let's explain some ease. What judge, knowing that there were allegations of sexual abuse against your eldest child, gave him permission to see the youngest children?
Judge Benjamin Strand in Sevierville, Tennessee, knowing there were allegations, very severe, and even proof backing up the allegations, ignored all of that and went ahead and let him see the twins, who were 1 year old, at McDonald's without me there, without their grandparents there, my mother and father. No one they knew. Completely just, and he even said to DCS, since you chose to involve yourselves in this, you can go supervise. So that was very flippant attitude to have. Just nothing serious. They screamed. I had to sit across the street from McDonald's and watch my little baby scream for a solid hour, and it was awful.
When was this?
April the 9th of 2009. 8?
I think so. They're 5, just turned 5.
No, it was 2009 because
They were
he was
1.
killed on the 20th.
Okay.
Yeah.
You comfortable with April 9th, 2009? Mom?
I think it was the 8th. I mean, 8, because
April
they're,
8th?
they just turned 5. So if they were 1 then, they'd only been 4, so it was 8, right?
Well, I don't think so.
Yeah, because this is 12.
It does,
Yeah.
for our purposes, it doesn't really matter, so
Okay.
we won't debate it.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
Fine.
there's just so much. I mean,
I
it's
know.
Oh, yeah.
hard to even.
And she had
Alright.
foreclosed.
It's
also.
documented. I have it on the document.
So what happened next?
That was awful. The visitation at McDonald's, it was horrible. It's hard to believe that adults could let this even happen. Then that's when you start doubting the system. You start seeing this is not, something's just not happening that it should be. You know, you start to really panic. In the meantime, there was supposed to be a psychologist to do evaluations on my husband and myself, to be totally unbiased, to give his opinion to the court of our parenting skills, who he would recommend to have custody. I went to every appointment. I brought documents with me, just everything I could, even his previous mental history. This psychologist spoke to his ex-wife on the phone. So did a lot of other people. And when the report came back, he recommended that my husband get full custody. And there is a statement in that psychologist report. His name is Dr. Tom Hanaway out of Knoxville, Tennessee. He says even if Jason had sexually inappropriately touched any of his children, in his opinion, he would have done so in a kind fashion, which is just disgusting. The report, which I have as well, shows he is completely biased towards Jason. He never had him sign a medical release of any kind. He didn't get his history. Just didn't care. I mean, clearly it was just, I guess, believing what they said because they had money maybe. I don't really know. It's just sick.
He was paid for a favorable opinion.
Something.
Yeah. 5 hours with you. And
I mean,
20 some hours with me.
I have an ex-fiance who I was with for 8 years, who spoke with everybody, including this man. You know, that shows my character. I mean, I'm with him. 8 years of my life. He knew me. We're still friends. He's remarried. He's got 2 children now. He was going to testify, but he spoke with everybody. And to me, that shows in a relationship how I am, who I am. And it just didn't matter. I had friends that I've had since, elementary school coming to testify. They spoke with him. It just didn't matter. He chose to just write down on the report, well, I spoke with somebody at the bank. They've never been to my home. They don't know me. They've never eaten with me or seen me with my children. So it's very, very obvious when you read it that he's going by people at the church. Even the pastor, he never came to my home. My friends know me. They know who I am. They know my family. They know my children. I don't understand it.
Well, who did this doctor work for?
This Dr. Tom Hanaway has his own practice.
Right. But he was he retained by
Supposed to be the court.
The court
He was
allegedly?
supposed to be the psychologist retained by the court. However, since then, I have found documents that show that there was something going on, like a setup maybe prior. I have my husband's attorney a year before the evaluation sending a letter to this guy. I know I have it. I have the document saying that, I have a client, meaning my husband. I need him to be evaluated to see if he's a good parent. And then it turns to say that myself, the wife, is a narcissistic, blah, blah, blah. So it's planting a seed against me right there. So this psychologist, instead of taking this letter to the judge and saying this is inappropriate, I'm not doing this, or you need to know about this, he went ahead and went ahead with the evaluation anyway. In the discovery, in my dad's case, this guy's cell phone number is in my husband's phone. I would never even think of having the guy's cell phone number. Also, there's a test that you take, an MMPI. It's a test that psychologists give to people when they're evaluating them. My husband's handwriting. I found a piece of paper that shows my husband's handwriting that lists everything about that test that are my results. In other words, he had to have known these results before the test came out. And the hours spent with my husband, one day, 5 hours. His sessions were like an hour and a half. Mine were, 90 minutes, 60 minutes. And I asked him if he would come to my home to see where I live. I said, to me, that would show you, these are my children, so this is very important. Would you ever make a house call? He did. He stayed an hour. He spent 5 hours with Jason on one visit, interviewed his parents, never interviewed mine. I would think that would be a very important thing to do, and he just never did. So, but the report shows that he just was completely biased to his side.
If you happen to have an answer to this question, I forgot mine.
Why would you even come into question when the issue was his sexual abuse of your child?
I wondered why I was questioned as a parent when I have nothing to hide. I'm not a perfect person, but I have nothing to hide. People can back up my character, who I am. It didn't matter. Even in the report of that psychologist, it touches on my husband's previous sexual abuse that was done to him, which was a lot. It shows the drugs, the alcohol. So in my opinion, and I would hope everybody's opinion, when somebody even has those addiction problems, you don't recommend they get full custody of children. But then these allegations, he just completely thought they were unfounded. The psychologist simply did not care. He did not believe me.
Did the psychologist have the benefit of the licensed clinical social workers report and the children and family reports that both identified him as the perpetrator?
This psychologist spoke with my son's LCSW, DCS, the GAL, the guardian ad litem. We haven't even talked about her. She completely kind of flipped in court. I don't know what happened, but the ex-wife who he beat and blind spoke with her, spoke with the ER doctor, spoke with everybody. It just didn't matter.
What's your opinion about how a doctor could have done what this man did?
My opinion about what this psychologist did is deplorable. It's sick, it's deplorable. Once again, not thinking of the children. Nobody wants to think of children anymore. Nobody wants to protect the children. It's all about money or status or I don't know what, but it's not about the children. These children are in a loving home. What I did, even taking out the order of protection, I did it because of love, not because of hate. You don't do these things because you're trying to get revenge. You're trying to get yourself in a safe situation. And you don't raise children around somebody who's doing drugs and alcohol, in my opinion. you don't have them around that, you know, and so you remove them from that situation. This psychologist did not take his job seriously. He did not care. All he cared about was, I guess, pleasing the other side or doing whatever they told him. I mean, he just did not there's nothing. He should have pulled a psychosexual history on Jason. He should have pulled every medical record. He didn't do anything.
When did this Dr. Hanaway issue his opinion?
Dr. Tom Hanaway, his report came out, I think it was in February of '09 is when the report came out. It was sealed. I'm sorry, at that point it was sealed. Before it even came out, it was sealed, which doesn't make any sense anyway. Of course, now it does. You know why they sealed it? Because they already knew what was in it and didn't want, you know, it even says on the front of the report on the first page that in Hanaway's words that he was worried a little bit if there would be any adverse reaction by me. Why would you worry about that? That's not logical. You know, that's just not a logical thing to even say. You know, unless you did something cheeky or wrong. So I really want him exposed. I want him. I know he's had to have hurt other people. You know, he's not an okay person. He's a really bad person, and I know he'll pay for it one day when he dies. You know, in his grave one day, however that may be. But he needs to realize and understand what he did.
Yeah. What was the ultimate effect of his decision and participation?
Dr. Hanaway's report, I don't really know how much it would have weighed upon the judge's decision, but I can tell you in my opinion, and from what I and many other people saw, professionals and friends, family saw in the courtroom, in Judge Strand's courtroom, that it was definitely going to probably go, you know, his opinion would probably have a lot to do with the judge's opinion, because they both were just not showing any concern for the children. You know, I don't know how it would have turned out, but I shudder to think. Let me just say that one statement. After my husband's death, I was able, as his executrix, to get his mental health records. In there, he not only admits, in his own words, to being a sexual abuser of others, but he says his idol is Jeffrey Dahmer, that he wants to kill people, but he wants to use his own hands because it would be make him feel more complete. He tried to burn his mother. You know, his mother threatened to leave his own birth father 2 years before his death because of his extreme abuse. He beat them. He is portrayed as a wonderful, loving father. It's just not true. This is what Hanaway should have done, what he should have known. Now, what do you think would have happened if this guy would have got custody of the children? My husband. You know, I shudder to think what would have happened.
Did Hanaway have these records, or could he have obtained these records?
Hanaway could have definitely gotten these records, should have had these records, should have at least pried enough, listened enough to know this stuff. You know, I found out, I'm just a mom. Look what I found out. You know, he just wasn't listening. He didn't care. He didn't even have him sign a release. I signed one the first day I was in there. I have nothing to hide. If you don't sign a release, in my opinion, that's a red flag. But I don't even think that he was asked to sign one, to be honest with you. I just don't think he was even asked to sign one. I don't think that anything from the beginning that I said was really taken seriously. This Hanaway says in his report, you know, like things like, well, I couldn't read the document. He actually says that. Like documents I produce, well, I wasn't able to read it. I can read it. You know? Why can't you read it? You know? I mean, I think of the Josh Powell case a lot. You know? Red flags are waving, but no one pays attention. Then when we're all massacred, which is what I believe would have happened, he couldn't handle the twins crying when they were babies. It made him mad. You know, I can see him hurting them out of anger, and I can see it being over in 5 seconds, because it's one of those just quick rage things that he used to go through, you know. So if we were all gone after the case, then it would have been, oh, there were red flags. Why not pay attention to those red flags when they're flying? Why wait till after the case? You know, there are people, men and women, who make up allegations against people. This is not that case, and you have to treat every one of those cases like they're telling the truth until you prove otherwise. And you keep those children safe until you prove otherwise, in my opinion.
When did you obtain the mental health records?
His mental health records, there's several. There's some I had obtained prior that people saw. There was enough evidence already on his mental health history. I've got several documents on that. But I received the over 200 pages after his death. I just knew, instinct, I knew he had been in this mental health institution, and I was the executrix of his will and his wife. I just called, submitted the forms, and I got over 200 pages of very damning records at that time.
All right, so February of '09, the report comes out and it's sealed. Take me from there.
After the sealed report, my attorney calls me, tells me the report came back. You know, you're not happy. That's not an appropriate word, but you are hopeful that the report is going to say what you think it's going to say. Mm-hmm. He told me that what it actually said, that he recommended my husband get full custody, and I just broke down. I broke down completely. I literally did, because honestly, I could not believe that's what I was hearing. I just couldn't accept it. None of us could. It was bizarre. It was beyond belief. You know, you're panicked, you're confused, and obviously all of these things are leading to just a total breakdown of your belief in people and the system.
We stop you. Try now to put together as short a paragraph as you can of, here was everything that we knew.
Presented.
And then here is this decision.
Gotcha.
And then talk about how devastating. But let's hit them with the...
We go to the state again against my husband and his mother and stepfather. We have testimony on the stand of the LCSW, my son's therapist, the ER doctor at Children's Hospital, diagnosis, sexual abuse. We have the doctor from Texas, the psychotherapist that treated Jason, gave him lithium, took the stand. I have his report, testified. DCS testified. Several people testified. In spite of that, Judge Strand ordered visitation with all 3 children at a supervised visitation place. Some people may think that's just fine. We did not think that was fine at all, because my son had made such progress in the months since he's been seeing his LCSW. He was happy. He was doing so much better. And to put him in front of, in this case, unfortunately, his father, who was sexually abusing him, he would regress right back to the beginning. No questions about it. And what do you do with that? I'm thinking I'm going to go to jail if I don't comply. But people think, well, he can't molest him there. He already molested him. His soul is already gone. His youth is already taken from him. So do you put him back in front of, imagine a full-grown woman who's been raped by a man, who has to go see that man's face in court, what that effect has on her. What about a child? A little tiny child. My son took a walk with my father a few days before that. I was holding my father's hand, his pa's hand, his grandpa, and said to my father, "Pa, does only Dada put him wee-wee in my mouth?" And I believe that was it for my dad. Because my father loves his grandchildren. And our faith in the system, I don't believe my dad had a choice but to kill him. I didn't know he did it at the time, and I think that was another way of protecting us, but I know why he did it. And I'll never, ever not understand that. That is protecting. He will tell you to this day that he had to. He did not want to. He had to. How does any adult, anybody with any sense, not understand this? You don't do this to a child. We're the ones who love this child and who have seen him go through all of these horrible symptoms of what has been done to him. It's horrible. You do not put him in front of someone who did this to him. And my dad shot him and killed him. I think it was 2 days before the visit was going to happen. After his walk with Ethan.
I'm going to get you to repeat that. After my father's walk with Ethan. Say what he said again, and say what happened.
After my father took a walk with Ethan, my child, my dad's grandson, I call him Pa, Ethan said to my dad, "Pa, does only Dada put him wee-wee in my mouth?" If anybody out there is a grandfather and your grandson says that to you and you love them as you should, what would you do? So he shot and killed him, my husband. I don't believe he had a choice. He did not want to, he had to. And I also want to say, as I've always said, there's been a lot of things spoken about our family in the local papers, things that are just not true, that we were divorced. We were never divorced. I'm his next of kin. His mother buried him illegally. The funeral home never contacted me, not one time. She actually evicted the children and I out of our home. I didn't let it get that far. I just left, but she did that. Jason was a child once. He was a little boy who was neglected. And that's why he turned out to be the way he was. So my heart goes out to him as a child. I'm not excusing him as an adult, but as a child, he should have been protected. This is what happens when you don't love your children and take care of them. A road of tragedy just gets dug. And so many people are hurt just because you don't address the situation and help your child. It turns them into monsters if they're not helped. I still pay attention to my son. How does he treat bugs? How does he treat animals? I watch him when he plays with other children. Because I will help him. I will let people know what happened. I will not just try to act like nothing happened. But I broke the cycle, so I'm the bad person. But I'm not. My son is a hero, and my father is a hero. They both are. I want to say this. It's always harder to do the right thing, but the right thing you have to do. That's all I feel. You just keep doing the right thing. And, we have clean consciences, and our hearts are pure. We haven't done hurt anybody. We've just tried to keep going.
Okay, when was the murder?
My dad shot my husband on April the 20th of 2009.
And is murder the right term for when somebody gets killed?
I really don't like to use murder
Yeah, I've kind of,
because I feel like, a murderer, what makes a murderer? I always like to say this, and this is just me. You go back to the good old days in the 1800s. If somebody is a horse thief, that means they thieve horses all the time. They're a horse thief. They would hang people back then for thieving horses. But if there's a man that stole a horse, why did he steal the horse? Was it to go see his sick mother in miles away where he didn't have a horse? Is that why he did it? To me, that makes the difference between him being guilty or not guilty. That's just my analogy. But my father, he was Citizen of the Year in the county he lives in. He's lived there for over 30 years with my mother. He's just been an asset to the town. He's been a loving person. You don't just turn and kill your son-in-law for nothing. So he's a protector, is what he is. And a protector should not be put in the same place as the molesters. And I also want to say one more thing. My husband was not a pedophile. He was a psychopath, narcissist psychopath. Our son, he has obviously sexually abused people, but it says young and old, which that I'm not trying to say there's a difference really, but when in regards to our son, it had something to do with his own abuse and his own inner child. And the psychotherapist explained every bit of that in his testimony in court. How someone like him becomes a molester of his own child. Because he is searching for his own inner child. He's trying to find, that's the only way he's ever been told how to express love. It's sickening, but that's the truth of it. But I don't believe that he just went out and molested only children. Pedophiles, they target children. My husband would have had sex with a dog or an old man or a young boy or a old lady or anybody for drugs, for alcohol, for whatever reason. He was just very sick. But he's sick because he was not helped. He was long gone, I think, before I even met him. I just think there was just this little bow tie that kept being tied around his neck. You have to be this way, you have to be this way. So he knew how to play the role. But there was nothing. He had nothing there left anymore.
tell me a little bit about your late husband's family. Are they well known in the community? Are they well-to-do? Are they poor?
My husband's mother married a man who is very well known. Their name is known in that town. He started one of the banks there. So that name is one of the good old boy network names in that town. And because of that, they have kind of solidified and protected their position in all this by using money, their name. You know, they basically do what they want to do. Like I said before, they have buried him illegally. They produced the wrong will. I didn't care anything about, I made a decision pretty quick that stuff was not important to me. So I never acted on it, even though I'm executrix of his will, of the will. I never even, my child's safety is way more important to me than stuff. They portray me as a gold digger. I've never received a dime, never asked for a dime. And it's interesting to me because there's court documents, his own testimony, where his attorney and him state that, he's just flat broke. Or he can't even afford to see the children when he could visit them before. He never even showed up because he said he couldn't afford it. So I don't really understand all of that. I really don't. It's just maybe they're scrambling or for something. I don't know. But I've never, you know, if I wanted to, I could have him, you know, dug up and buried somewhere else. But of course, I would never do that because I don't care. But you know, they just trampled over me. I am not in. When my children Google the obituary one day, I'm not listed in it. They left me completely out of it as the mother. It's like they just erased me after that. Like I don't exist. I just feel like that's not thinking of the children. If you're thinking of the children, you're going to have their mother listed in there. You know, my husband's mother took out restraining orders on my entire family about 3 days after his death to stay away from the burial and the service, which there's a point, you know, I don't care what she wants to do. Bury him where you want to, but there's a moral. You're supposed to do things the right way, you know, and to me, my children one day will know the truth by documents. They'll know their father was ill and they'll know why. But to me, it is their choice and their decision to take maybe his wedding ring or his clothing or his possessions. That's their stuff to do with what they want to do. They might have to look at it. You know, they really never knew him. So then if they want to get rid of it, if they want to burn it, if they want to do whatever, that should be their right. And I just feel like that right was taken away from them. That should be their choice one day. And they have nothing. You know.
She was nice. She was.
How did you learn that your husband had been killed?
I learned of my husband's death through a friend of mine that called me at 10 o'clock at night when I was in bed. I always answered the phone, my friend, dear friend Sharon. And she always calls to check on how things are going with the kids and the courts, and just been a great friend. And she said, well, do you not know anything? And I said, well, we go back to court, and whatever the next court date was, I told her, and she said, Wendy, do you not know anything? And I said, what's going on? Is something going on? You sound funny. And she said, I got an email from her stepdaughter, who works with Jason's brother's wife, that he had been killed. And I just said, well, there's 3 people in this town with his name, so that's a mistake. Because, I mean, nobody said anything to me, so I'm sure that's a mistake. And she said, no, Wendy, I think it's true. I started to kind of get panicky, and I just said, I have to call the police. So I went and got my mom, who was asleep in the other room, and called my dad. My dad and he took me to the police station, and it was true. He took me to the police station because I didn't know that he had done it, and like I said, I don't hold anything against him for that. I think that was his way of, you know, why did we have to know that? You know? And they questioned me for like 5 minutes. He gave them a gunpowder test and talked to them and took me home. They followed me to my house and took my clothing and things I had on, and then they went up to my mom and dad's and took some things that he had on, and that was it. But that police never knocked on my door, and I really will always want to know why, because I feel like that in everything I've ever seen, no matter if there's I would have been a natural suspect, and I understand that, but I still think they should have come to my door and told me. I would have thought that would have been appropriate than hearing it from somebody, a friend who got an email from somebody. I'll never understand that. I'll never understand why the funeral home didn't ever contact me, and to this day has never contacted me. I'll never understand why my attorney at the time didn't pursue the will, even though I don't care. Again, it's the kids. It's about the kids. And again, nobody's thinking of the kids. You know, we're fine. They eat, you know, and we have what we need and what we were happy. But again, there's a moral. You know, there's a way to do things that's right, and there's a way to do them that's wrong. And I feel like that everything should have been just done the right way. And it wasn't. You know, I didn't know how I felt. I mean, my position is I'm going from a protective mama who's in full throttle protection mode to trying to figure out how I feel about this. You're shifting gears big time. You know, a big thing to try to handle. And so I didn't even know how I felt. And then it's like, here comes the constable with restraining orders. Personally, that's not where my mind would be if my son was murdered, shot. You know, that's not where I would be. So I feel like that, you know, I'm very confused about a lot of that. You know, the grandmother, the children's grandmother, my husband's mother, has not once asked about the children, has not once asked about, even before his death, they've not asked about the children once. To me, that's very abnormal. For a loving grandparent, that's very abnormal. You should, number one, not kick them out of their house at Christmas, but you should be concerned about them. Be concerned about them before they were even conceived by telling me, not letting this even happen. You know, protecting any offspring from ever happening. I love my kids. I'm so thankful that they're here, but they don't have a dad. They deserve a loving dad like any other child. They never had a chance of having that. They would have been in an abusive marriage had I stayed. Of course, there's no way I would do that, but my point is, you don't, that's the road of tragedy I'm talking about. You don't allow that to happen. You know, I don't know. I found out in one of the medical records that he's allergic to chocolate. Little things like that you would need to know for your own children. Things like, I don't even know who I was, you know, the person I was married to never existed. It never was. So it's hard to understand how I can be the bad guy in this when this should have been taken care of a long time ago. I mean, he should have been helped. It should have never happened. When he was abused the first time, somebody should have cared enough to help him. Nobody ever did. It's boggling, I guess. I don't know what, I mean, it's, even still to this day, when we all sit and think about this, when I'm going through documents or I have to look at stuff, I don't even have words. I don't. It's like you don't even know what to say. How could this happen? How could adult people make these decisions and let this happen?
Who is really responsible for his death? What if,
I know what you're going to say.
what if the courts had done the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
What if the doctor
Mm-hmm.
had done the right thing?
Jimmy Dunn.
Listen, the people responsible for my husband's death are the DA, Jimmy Dunn, who my dad went to, thought he was friends with, went to several times begging him for help. Didn't care. He went to a lot of people and asked him for help. But really, it's the people, the judge, the people who are the system. Like I said, my dad said, the systems don't fail, the people do. People running the system set up to work. The people fail it by not doing what they're supposed to do. If the system, the people running it, protected these children, and even protected him, Jason, from himself, the father, my husband, you know, by prosecuting him, by listening, he would at least be alive and maybe in a mental institution or in, you know, that would have been my preference rather than jail, to be honest, because I think that they'd just get worse. He would end up dead anyway. I think that it was the judges, the people running the system, the people that didn't listen. I think Hanaway played a big part in it. I think that this could have been avoided. My father's not the one responsible for it. He did not have to do this if the people did their job.
How long after you went down to the police station was it that the police focused on your dad?
I think my dad was focused on right away because my husband's mother had already, told them that he did it, which is interesting, really, if you think about it. My husband had threatened my dad several times, but my dad told Jason a long time ago, and he let everybody know, the family and everybody, that if he ever laid a hand on me, that he would kill him. I don't know what father wouldn't say that, who loves their daughter. And it's interesting to me, very interesting to me, how a lot of people, men, women, will say, when they hear what my dad did, or any grandparent or parent would do to protect their children, shoot someone or beat someone to death. I would have done that. I would have done the same thing. That's what I would have done. Really? Would you? I mean, what else was there to do? There was no other option. There's not a checklist for this stuff. You just don't let it happen. You don't put the child back in front of somebody who's done this to them when there is proof. You don't, period. The other option, what? Go ahead, take him. He screams. Then he's back to square one. Then the father possibly gets custody, and you have to watch him grow up and turn into the exact same thing his father is, and his little brother's with him. I don't think so.
Was your dad aware of Hanaway's report at the time?
My father was aware of Hanaway's report. I don't know how many men can relate to this anymore, the kind of person my dad is. But my father comes from the old school. I'm 45 years old, and I've never heard my dad say one swear word in my life, or my mother. That's the truth. Ever. That was normal to me. But now as an adult, I feel very lucky because that's all you hear anymore. My kids don't hear that. I didn't hear it. My dad takes his role as a father, grandfather, head of the family very seriously. His faith in God very seriously. I'm sure he had several conversations with God about this. And when you're the matriarch of the family, the way that it should be. Patriarch, thank you. When you are the patriarch, thank you, of the family, and you take your role so very seriously. I mean, my dad is a very moral person. He has integrity, he has character, he has honor. That's what we come from. And when you come from that, and you understand that, and what that kind of love is for your family, you're going to protect them. No questions asked. I mean, he's loved. I mean, we have a book very thick about his character references, who he is, And I mean, he's a Vietnam veteran. He was in, the Air Force, Citizen of the Year. Sold barbecue on the river for 15 years with my mom, and they've got so many people they've met doing that. They won awards and trophies for their barbecue, but more importantly, it's who they are as people. I don't think Jason's family can say that. They've called us horrible names, said that we should be hung by trees till we're dead. It's pretty awful. And people might say, yeah, but your dad murdered their son. Nobody wanted that to happen. Nobody's sitting here thinking it's funny. Nobody's sitting here thinking that's wonderful. It was necessary. And if I want anybody to know anything, it's that nobody wanted that to happen. But you got to put a child and their safety before somebody who's very ill like this and can do this to somebody. This person could not be saved. He could not be rehabilitated. Nobody was even, it's like what happens every single hour, second of every day. Somebody molests a child, they arrest them, they're released 30 days later to molest and eventually kill children, or usually that's what happens. I know that. Everybody knows that. but people don't want to do anything about it. And that's why I'm doing this and sitting here doing this. It's not very comfortable. It's not like, whoopee, this is great. You're doing it because you have to. Because I love my children. I love my father. My children love my father. They miss my father. They need him to be with them. He's the best influence and greatest influence they will ever have in their life. And he needs to be home with them. And my dad's been threatened to be killed already where he's at because he doesn't swear. They call him old school and pops in there. But he's already had an effect in there positively on people, and maybe that's why this had to happen. I don't know, but he needs to come home. He doesn't need to sit there. People like my father don't need to be in a place like that where people are hurting children.
All right, so when did your dad get arrested? And
Last year.
My dad was arrested
April.
April of 2010. Or, I'm sorry, 2011.
Wait a minute.
so is that long after?
Well, he was,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, actually,
Your
It-
husband was shot April
it was a
20th,
year. It was a year.
2009.
It's a year later.
it was a year, so it was 2010 that he was actually arrested. But then he was in jail for 3 months, let out on bond. And by the way, the family of my husband, a lot of the extended family works at the courthouse, so there's never any confidentiality. I mean, when my father would have to go in shackles to the courthouse, the family members that work at the courthouse are employed there would stand up and just leer. So you have that whole inappropriate aspect going on. That's just not, you sit in your seat and do your job. That's my opinion. But that went on, and the bond company, they tried to shut the bond company down. A member of the family is the, what's her
Clerk of the
position?
criminal court.
Clerk of the criminal court. There's no other incident of this ever happening. They tried to shut the bond company down. They actually did for about a week. And this poor woman had to come up with like $1 million or something, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to practice again. And they said, well, it's because it's who you're posting bond for. So that was another unbelievable thing. We've spoken with the lady, Sylvia, and she's more than willing to talk about that and share that, what happened to her. But there's just been so much.
All right, so your dad gets
So
arrested in April of 2000.
After he's in jail for 3 months post bail, which by the way, his bail was $850,000, which is really high for someone who's been a citizen in a county and never, my dad was arrested, by the way, over 35 years ago, had nothing to do with violence. That can totally be looked up and figured out, and it was a company he worked for. I'm not even gonna get into it because it doesn't matter. It was nothing violent, nothing at all to related. Been gone for a long time, and never having anything happen. We've had other cases in this town at the same time this was going on of a man that's not even from Sevier County murder a woman, and his bond's $100,000. So everything was just to keep him in jail, to hurt us, to anything they could do. So he comes home for a year on bond. Then a year later is when we were set to go to trial. My dad we got an attorney, Bruce Poston. Again, hindsight. Heard he was just the best criminal attorney around. So you just have to trust that, So we took him on, had some donations by some very wonderful people to help us get that attorney. And he didn't really, all he would say to us is the truth doesn't matter. We showed him everything, all the documents, and he just kept saying the truth doesn't matter, you got to know how to play the game. Well, you're at his mercy, basically. You don't really know what to do. So my husband's mother and the DA came at the attorney and us with a plea bargain. So we're at the Cracker Barrel. The DA's at her house. And we know she wanted this deal because she didn't want all this stuff to come out, we're assuming, about her son. Because they were saying, the judge was saying that he would not allow anything about the abuse because he didn't want to retry the divorce and the custody. There never was a divorce or custody. Never. Never happened. So that's a pretty big issue. So my dad, basically, by the Postons urging us to take the plea deal, it was the best way for us to go. My dad was thinking of my brother's 2 children who are teenagers, his other grandchildren. He's thinking, okay, if I go before a jury in this town, I could possibly get life. It's just very corrupt. I don't want my teenage grandchildren to have to be ridiculed, teased. I don't want to have to visit my family behind glass, possibly. This way, I'd be able to hug my kids. I'd be able to hug my grandkids, read them a story maybe, that kind of thing. That's where our logic was coming from, because we had no other option. We felt like. Take our chances in this corrupt, I mean, you got everybody at the courthouse, basically related to the family. So, took the plea deal. Now, I do have to say that this attorney did come at us with a way to win. We turned it down because we felt it was unethical and dishonest. He wanted, when I was on the stand and I was asked, did I kill Jason? He wanted me to plead the 5th. Shedding the light on me. My dad goes free, he wins. We said no. He got very angry at my dad and us for not doing that. I think anybody with any moral or ethics would never have done that. You win your case, but then they're going to come after me. Even though there's no evidence, it's going to happen. So we turn that down. Now, fast forward, there's a lot of people helping my dad right now that believe in him, even where he's at. So there is actually a Tennessee law statute that's called defense of necessity. It covers my dad and what he did. This attorney should have known that statute. We should have gone to trial. That should have been his defense. Defense of necessity. Didn't happen. My father has written this attorney twice, wanting a copy of the plea agreement he signed. Obviously, he should get that. My mother has called numerous times requesting it. I went to pick up the discovery expecting to get that as well. He says, well, it's in the main file. Don't have it. I said, well, my dad needs that urgently. He has 1 year to file for post-conviction relief. Gotta have it. I'll get it to him right away. Never sent it. Finally, my dad had to report him to the board. No other option. He just now, yesterday, responded because the board obviously is going to take his license away. So there's fire lit under him. So he calls my mom, leaves her a message, never mentions anything about the plea agreement. My dad just got a letter from him in the mail today. And it said, or he gave him a copy of it. Mm-hmm. But he never mentioned anything about being reported to the board. So, my dad would like to either have a retrial and a change of venue, for obvious reasons, or have commutation. Let him go for time served. I mean, there's a guy right now in Texas that just, with his bare hands, killed a man who molested his 6-year-old daughter. He just got acquitted. There's no difference here to me, except we tried to go through all the hoops legally, tried to do what was right, and now we end up here. I don't know why this attorney did not produce the plea agreement. I have no idea. That's just very illogical to me. But I do know that what he presented to us to do was unethical, and he shouldn't have done it. And he shouldn't have got mad at us for saying no. I mean, I had to go talk to someone that day, because you can imagine, you know, I'm like, well, I have the chance to help my dad, even though my parents were both telling me, we've already told him, no, we're not doing this, absolutely not. You can imagine how or maybe you can't, how I must have felt with this on my shoulders. Well, should I do this? Should I not do this? I mean, I was just distraught over what to do. But yeah, when you get a clear head, there's no way. You know, I mean, it's not right. You know, and when you try to handle a wrong with another wrong, it's not going to be right. We've tried to handle everything with class as much as we can. Never have we badmouthed these other family in the papers or anything like they've done us. Never. And there's just lies we can prove. They're all lies. Not divorced. I have the death certificate I can show you. I'm next to kin. Never was a divorce. Custody, no custody battle. They say that when he died, he was in a heated custody battle. It was the state of Tennessee versus him, his mother, and stepfather. They issued a no-contact order against all of them. It was in place at the time of his death. So he was not able to have contact, but it was from the state. So in the detective synopsis of the homicide, they state in the first paragraph that I accused my husband of allegedly molesting our son, and that DCS and the Sevier County Police Department did their investigation and the charges were unfounded. Detective Tim Coulter was assigned to the case. All of this is in my son's file by DCS. He never once investigated anything and was later arrested on his own charges of assault. We have the newspaper article to prove it. And DCS, the caseworker was furious when she read that, so she actually wrote a letter as part of the post-conviction relief, had it notarized, that yes, DCS did do an investigation, the charges were founded, he was indicated as perpetrator, they were trying to get him prosecuted. He called the DA's office, spoke with Emily Abbott, who worked at the DA's office at the time. Am I going to be prosecuted? Only if you confess, the child's under 3. That's what he was told. That's disturbing on many levels. And there's just a lot more. I mean, I could be sitting here, you know, it's just ridiculous. You know, my dad needs to come home, but the bigger picture is children. Mine, everybody's children being protected. No matter what the cost, you protect children. You don't let their innocence be stolen from them. You don't let them grow up drinking alcohol and drugs, trying to kill pain from some adult molesting them. It shouldn't happen. Every child deserves to grow up in a loving environment, in a home. If they're not going to be in a loving environment where they are, rescue them. But you get them away from that before they're axed in the head like Josh Powell did to his children and blown up in a house. You don't let that happen. So
when did your dad tell you what happened?
I found out that my dad killed my husband to protect myself, really, and my kids in the attorney's office. When we met with Bruce Poston in the office is when I was told. I don't think Mr. Poston ever believed that. I think he thought that I probably knew before, but that is when I found out. And I told my dad that, you know, I understand. And I understand why my dad didn't just go say I did it. Because my dad was leaving us, that would leave us wide open. You know, and I know that he probably thought they were going to come get him the next day maybe. Or, you know, he didn't do this before. So, you know, you can't walk in somebody else's shoes like that. So he's going to spend every second he can with us. And I think when one day turned into the next, you know, you just kind of, I'm sure the stress on him had to have been enormous. I know that, just not knowing. You know, and I think that's why this plea agreement, he did say in court, he wants this to be over for our family and for the other family, that systems don't fail, people do. Bad things happen when good people do nothing. And Your Honor, I'm just a grandpa. Because that's all he is. And he's a really good one. The best that there is. And, you know, it's sad that he had to be driven to this. But love drove him to do it. Not hate, not revenge. And that's the truth. And, you know, I will never understand why my husband's mother, his brother, his sister-in-law, the stepfather, all of them knew all of this. I will never understand why they did not care enough to just not let me marry him, but to help us, to protect us, you know, from him. I mean, it's crazy. And I know the first wife he had, her life, she's still terrified. She'll never be the same because of what her experience were with him.
Do you think your husband's family realized that they're largely to blame?
I think that his family really believes, I think that, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, I believe they're very ill. And I think that when you really believe your own truth, no matter what it is, that you really believe it. And I say that because the things they've done are very illogical. They're not logical. And I think that they don't maybe realize. It's like, to me, throwing a boomerang of lies out there, not realizing it's going to come back and hit you right between the eyes. Pretty hard. They've just lied so much that it's coming back. You know, nobody wants to have, I mean, I could have taken all this information I have and, you know, put it with the newspapers. I have children. I love my children. You know, I want my children to know the truth about everything. You know, his mother's telling everybody at the church they go to that I won't let her see him. That's just not true. I wouldn't let her see him now for obvious reasons, but, you know, it's just been, for example, there's restraining orders of the funeral and the burial. You know, then she tells people that I know, she's told, well, she didn't even go to the funeral. So you have a no-win, no-win situation with this family. You know, I left that house when I even learned of evicting. I didn't dig my feet in the ground, and I just left. I left it immaculate. I left 90% of everything in it. I just took what I need. I didn't take any of his things. But yet they still brought the locksmith and the police with them, even though I turned the keys in, and we bleached everything. Everything was smelled. Everything was left. I mean, I even videotaped it. It was left immaculate. There's nothing you can do, I don't think, in this situation. I think that I know. I became the enemy the minute I didn't keep it in the family. I'm the one that broke the cycle, which, you know, I did the right thing. So, persecute me, whatever, I did the right thing. You know, I never did anything to them. I've never been hateful. I've never been hurtful. I know that. And I have to just know that. And I have to have faith that everything's going to be okay.
Okay, your dad has been in prison now for how long?
My dad has been in prison for a year.
And what, does anybody quote you any odds or anything on what the chances are that he could get out soon?
We feel like God is greater than any man. And, you know, I really believe in my heart that God knows my little boys' hearts. And he knows that they need their pa. And he knows my dad's heart. That's all I really do know. I mean, all we can do, like I said, is do what's right. You know, God's going to have to take it from there. We're just throwing the coal in the fire. We're not driving the train. You know? I mean...
When did you find out what your son told your dad? Before or after?
It was after. But, you know, my dad was sitting up in a lawn chair every night, all night. And my husband, we live in the country, and there's a vacant lot at the time next to me. And he was coming and pulling in that vacant lot and turning around. He had a diesel, so they're very loud. And you don't know, you know, what somebody's capable of. And when me digging, finding all this paperwork and all this mental stuff, that is very, 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 very scary. You know, I watch TV, I hear what happens to people. So we pay attention. All we did was pay attention to my child, to the signs. That's all we did. And now look, we were right. You know, there's even in the discovery of my dad's case, there's even a private investigator that my husband and his family hired to follow me. They accused me of having an affair with my nephew. They didn't know it was my nephew. They saw me driving a Kmart with, I guess, what they thought was a guy, you know, in my van. And my sister-in-law even had to write a letter saying, you know, my son, Jesse Robinson, did not have an affair with his Aunt Wendi. He was riding with her to Kmart. You know, and then the detective even says, look, she doesn't go anywhere. This is, you're wasting your money. You know? I mean, I don't have any desire to ever be in a relationship again, which is very sad, but it's very true. This has totally diffused any fairy tale I've ever had. How could I ever let somebody in my life with my children? It says I don't even think about it. My children are my priority. Trying to get myself through this, you know, it's hard enough. You know, it's just devastating. And
is the attorney's name Gross?
which one?
Sorry.
Poston. Bruce Poston is my dad's criminal attorney.
Did Poston ever think that you killed your husband?
I don't really know. He did tell me that when he does trials, he has a mock jury that he kind of presents just
Discovery.
the discovery to. And he kind of gets a feel for what a real jury might think, which is pretty smart. They all thought I did it. So I guess, I don't know what he thought. You know, I think in his mind, I really believe that he was thinking of winning. I really believe that he did not think of my children, the passion my dad has for his family. I think all he thought of was winning the case. And I think when you think that way, you're not going to win anything. You know? I think he's a glory guy. I really do. And I think he just wanted to win. And when we kind of diffused his little strategy, I think he threw us under the bus. My dad under the bus, the whole family under the bus. I just don't think he really cared, because he kept saying the truth doesn't matter. I think it does matter. And I think that nothing else matters but the truth. And the abuse is the truth. It's why this happened. So it has to be part of any trial or anything else. How can you not hear that and make a choice about someone's life? Especially knowing what we know now about Jason's history. You know, that there's a trail. I mean, it just tells the story.
Just for the record, did you kill your husband?
I did not kill my husband. Anybody that knows me knows. Now, I will say this. I think any woman, I didn't kill him, but I think that if he had come to the house and he tried to gas the house or tried to hurt my children, you know, I would have been capable of anything to protect my children, but I did not kill him.
And were you aware that your father was contemplating killing your husband?
I didn't know that my dad was contemplating, or I don't even know that my dad knew he was contemplating, to be honest with you. I don't think he was. I think that my dad just was so, his heart was just so tore out of his chest, like all of us. I think that he was just, as a protector, completely just stressed out.
If I'm recalling everything correctly, maybe you could just kind of say this, and if I'm not correct, whatever's wrong. You find out that your husband has issues. You personally have been threatened by it. You discover child pornography. You go to counseling. You try to work things out. various authorities determine that your child has been sexually abused, and 2 of the 3 can go far enough to identify your husband. A judge is giving your husband visitation rights to all of the children, including the abused child. And your father walks along down the street with his grandson that he loves with all of his heart, who talks about his father doing unbelievable things to him. Is this everything that your dad had in his mind? And was there anything else? And just put all that in a paragraph or 2.
I went to counseling with my husband to try to help him when I thought that it was from his time in Iraq. All the abuse, the drugs, alcohol. That became apparent that there was more going on after the child pornography was found, threats on my life, pictures being broken off the wall, glass on the floor, all this stuff going on, taking out the order of protection, having a LCSW, a therapist of my child, DCS, ER doctor, psychologist that treated my husband, all coming to the aid of my children, saying this happened. The judge not caring, the judge putting them all back in his presence. That was to happen. My son taking a walk with my father, his grandpa, and saying to my dad while holding his hand, "Pa, does only Dada put him wee-wee in my mouth?" That's not all that my son said. My son has said so many things, done, acted out, ways that a child should not. All these things were weighing on my dad. All of us, but my dad, as the patriarch, as the protector of our family, all these things were going through his head. He was tired, up all night in a lawn chair, exhausted. What this does to you, what the stress does to you, I will never be able to explain. It wreaks havoc on you. So I can only imagine. I know what it's done to me as a mother. I can only imagine what it's done to my father as a protector. All these things combined, just nobody listening. My father's cries to the DA, Jimmy Dunn, for help. Just all these things, I think, is what led up to the result of my husband is life ending.
That was really good. That's really important. I think that
It's very important. It's
all that stuff.
It's the truth, you know. It's just the truth. I mean,
I absolutely guarantee you. I absolutely, positively guarantee you that I wouldn't have done anything any different.
Thanks.
Maybe I would have. Maybe what I would have dreamed something else up, but I might have tried one more effort. But if I'd already called the district attorney and
Yeah.
everybody else,
They're supposed to be, he was in Kiwanis Club with these guys. The DA, and the DA comes up with him when he's getting ready after this is over. You know what the DA does? Comes up to, we had some good times, didn't we?
well, when my dad's bond was posted,
Yeah,
that was an emotional moment because the guards just cheered. You know?
They all line
Because
up.
of who my dad is, not because of...
They all lined up in the hallways and clapped when he got his bond. See, they didn't think we could come up with the money, but because I had called the bonds company and I says, okay, what if it's $250? Because I figured it'd be $250 or $500. I says, but what if it's $250, $500, $1,000, or what if it's $1 million? What would you take? And she says, what do you have? I says, right now all I have is $15,000. She said, I'll take it, and that was a miracle right there. And of course, we immediately went to down there and posted his bond, and that blew the family out of the water because they figured us little paupers just couldn't do it,
Well, you've also got the newspaper.
And then a week later, it was a week later, they said, you have to be back in court. The bonds lady calls us, we have to be back in court on Tuesday. And we said, why? And she says, it's against me. She said, and then we went to court, and just him was the only one in the bond company. And they said, well, you know, if you you're out of compliance with they're going to audit you, and you're out of compliance. And they said, but you know, if you drop Mr. What do you call it? Negate Mr. Robinson's bond, that you'd be back in compliance.
Drop the bond.
Right, whatever.
No longer give it
Exactly.
the bond.
Right.
Not reduce the amount, but drop it.
Right. Drop, then they would be in compliance. And Judge Vance did say this. He says, well, why just Mr. Robinson's bond? If you do that to Mr. Robinson's bond, what about all these other people you got to do it to? Where are we going to put them?
Well, Judge Vance is probably the only judge that I can say was really trying to do the right thing. I really believe that.
Except for the bond.
Except for,
Because every time the other family was in the courtroom,
well, that's
every
true.
time the other family was in the courtroom, he kind of leaned toward, you could see how his attitude changed.
I didn't go to any of the things because I felt like I need to be with the kids, and I felt like that my emotions were so raw that if I went, it might, just do more harm than good. I didn't want them to see me break down and give that satisfaction to them, because I still have a lot to deal with when it comes
Like
to
I
all
said,
that.
Rita Ellison, the clerk
I
of
want you
the
guys to scoot closer. I want you, Mom, to scoot closer to your dog.
But Rita Ellison is the clerk of the criminal court. She's the one that
Family member.
audited the bond company. She's the one that would have picked the jury pool. So she is the clerk of the criminal court. Jetty Clabo is a county trustee, is her sister-in-law. She also works in the courthouse, and I believe they have several
sisters that also work there, but they're all extended family, and we just felt like there's no confidentiality. Even when my dad's post-conviction relief will go straight to Rita Ellison.
She'll pass the
She'll
word
pick the
real
phone
fast.
up, and it's just not right.
Okay, I'm stop.